Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 3 of How the Business is Played. My name is Charece Williams. I'm a sports brand entertainment marketing executive. Also, because we like to play with each other, a former volleyball player at North Carolina State University, Division I. Just had to let you know that I understand the sports industry, both as a student athlete and also as an executive. I've been so excited to share with you every week around what's happening in the business in sport. And I've had the pleasure of working with Monica McNutt, but she gets to have a day off today. And this is going to be such a treat for all of you because I am bringing on board here a woman that I have admired since we both started our careers in sports, Ivory Tabb, who is an expert amongst many things, but I'm really excited to dive into NIL with her today because I've really seen her break some ground here and be a thought leader in this space. But Ivory, please introduce yourself to everyone.
Hello, my name is Ivory Tabb, and I'm a sports marketing agent. I also played Division One sports. I went to LSU. I ran track. I've coached sports. I've been a recruiter. I've been an academic advisor. And based on my marketing expertise, it was easy to go into NIL. So now, like Charisse, we go around the country, we speak, we talk, we let parents, folks, kids know about the business beyond sports. So I was beyond thrilled you started this show. And then number two, when you asked me to be on, because I am super excited about all the things that are happening.
Well, this is a fun time to be talking about this topic coming right out of, the men still have to play tonight, but NCAA basketball tournament. And while we typically do not talk about the wins and the losses on the court, because that's not the angle of this show, I think it's pretty interesting to talk about some things that we saw because it does parallel what happens in business. So the women's game is complete, yesterday, I should say. UConn defeated University of South Carolina. And it was such a battle of two teams that well coached, the best players that are playing this game, and ultimately having a different outcome in that one really excelled and one struggled a bit, right? And then when you look on the men's side, I think it was a surprise to many that Duke didn't make it to the championship game, but you saw a Houston team that is really coming to this game very different in terms of their hunger and just what they want to accomplish. And I wanted to bring that up because it reminds me a lot of what happens in business, right? I think sometimes you look at a brand and you say, oh, they got so much money. They're invested into this team, this athlete, this, league, whatever it may be. And you expect that their work to be the best that you've ever seen. They have unlimited resources. But at the end of the day, like what you're able to buy is just part of the story. The real key to it is strategy, which again, all the teams that I mentioned had a great strategy, but then it comes down to execution, right? In terms of like how you actually play when it's time to play the game. So with that being said, Ivory, we've been talking around NIL a little bit on this podcast, and I would like to talk about execution of brands and in this space. And in particular, I know we've talked about a lot of the women's side, but Cooper Flagg is nothing to sneeze at as it relates to the NIL game. Would love to chat a little bit about what we've seen from him and his sponsors.
So with me, him being the number one player this year, it's one of those things that we're anticipating and we're hoping that the number one player on a team that historically has put plenty of players in the NBA. Their NCAA program is a blue blood. Everyone knows Duke basketball. We expect that to translate into wins both on the court and off the court. With NIL, what makes it so different is you can do certain things that in our lifetime you never were able to do before. So, as you said, how does that correlate for brands? One thing that's extremely interesting with Cooper is he is a New Balance signed athlete, but Duke is a ninth school. So, what that means is during play, when we are in press conferences, when we are handling the business of Duke, then he is in Nike gear. When he isn't handling the business of Duke, then he wears New Balance and he's featured in New Balance commercials, New Balance social posts, New Balance ads, all the things to highlight that he is a New Balance athlete. And the thing I'm going to say, that I think you will be shocked with if New Balance dropped the ball.
Mm.
And they dropped the ball because not only did they not make enough social content for us to know, folks that know, but folks that didn't know have no clue that he is a New Balance athlete. And I really think what happened is they were waiting for him to win it all, and then we're going to roll out more social, more posts, more advertising, more branding once he's the champion. And that's how we're going to accept. And unfortunately, they lost with 2 games to go.
You know what? I have to say that what you are highlighting is something that makes brands nervous, right? Like when a student athlete is playing for their team, they are in that outfitter majority of the time, and they're
Yes.
kind of famous in that outfitter, which means that if you are a brand that's not a sponsor of the school, you do need to work really smart to ensure that you are making the connection to that athlete and to their fan base in the way that you want to. So to your point, this was a chance for them to be active, to attempt to take advantage of when he's all over the place, to be able to make their connection. It's an uphill battle, but
Yes.
it's possible. So to like show another side of that. So Malaysia Fulwiley is a Curry Brand athlete. Now I know that Curry Brand is underneath Under Armour, South Carolina's Under Armour school, but the point I was going to make is that they launched, her player exclusive shoe,
Yes.
the Lay with the Butter shoe during the tournament. So again, made the connection. Now, even if they weren't an Under Armour school, like they could still have launched that shoe because her fans are paying attention and she's hot, right? Everyone's paying attention to
Yes.
her. But they also, I'm pretty sure I saw this. I don't think I'm making it up. I'm pretty certain that even though her team lost yesterday, I think I saw a post from Under Armour, actually,
Yes.
a Curry Brand, actually congratulating her on the season that she had.
Yes.
So to your point, that is a stark contrast to the lack of activity that we're seeing from New Balance.
And what makes it so interesting is last year, New Balance, they know this formula works for them. One of the big brand explosion that happened last year was when Coco Gauff won. As soon as she won, they New Balance put on a shirt on her parents. It was everywhere immediately. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like New Balance knows what to do when you're winning. That was lightning in the bottle. You have to be so fast, so specific. We're ready. They had the shirts ready, printed, go, parents on, Coco on, boom, we won. With
Mm-hmm.
Cooper leading up to this, especially because it's NIL. So, one fun fact about NIL in this situation, just last year, brands got to put an outfit athletes that weren't school related.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting in that is when NIL started in 2021, that was a big rule that you couldn't wear a competitor of your school, or you couldn't be sponsored by a competitor of your school. If your school was a Coke school, then you had to do possibly something with Coke and Coke identities. So
Mm-hmm.
interestingly enough, 2 other huge recruits in this year's class that went to Rutgers, they were signed by Nike, but that's an Adidas school. So it can be done, but New Balance didn't put out, like, we should all know who Cooper Flag is an NIL athlete of, and I feel like we have no clue. They could have put him, getting ready for game day, sitting him in his hotel room with tying up his New Balance shoes. They could have had him showing some after hour workouts, getting ready, getting his shots up in New Balance gear. And all of these things could have been taped well before the tournament and just had them in his pocket when, as soon as they knew that he was on his way, boom, let's talk about how he's on his way. And this is what he does when he prepares. And this is how he wears his shoes, a day in the life, behind the scenes, any of those things to highlight that he was a New Balance athlete, and they didn't do any of them.
It kind of goes back to what I was saying at the top of the show. Like, clearly, the strategy of how to leverage an athlete who is an endorser of your product, lots of companies know how to do that. Athlete, musician, whomever it is that's endorsing. But what I think is happening is that people are unsure around NIL in college athletes or high school athletes. And there's a couple ways you can approach this when you're unsure. You can be timid. You could wait. You could miss a moment. You could be cautious. That totally works for some. Watch how others do it. Avoid the pitfalls. Be ready to go when you're ready. And then others get out there and just give it a try. You see what sticks, what doesn't stick. But one thing that I would say, and I'm sure you have great perspective on this with all the athletes you've been working with, is that they want to be known for something.
Yes.
And not just like their school or, their team, obviously they're team players, but these brands are choosing them because there is a connection to the brand ethos, to the personality, to the, something that is often adjacent to the athleticism, but sometimes is different. And these athletes want to show that. And one thing I see on my side of the house is that it's really important that when brand partners do deals with teams, with athletes, et cetera, that they do tap into their whole being and that they're not focused just on kind of what they're quote unquote famous for, because you miss the opportunities to do something authentic with them sometimes.
And that was the biggest, really, when I go around the country and I teach NIL, one of the things that I do, and I call them tips by Tabb, the first 2 tips are the most important for any brand. And I even feel like on your side of the house, when I say these 2 things, you're going to be like, Al, all the time, regardless of what we're doing. Number 1 is leverage big moments. Yes, the moment is the win. Winning the national championship. That is the biggest moment, the biggest stage. But you have a bunch of games you have to get to in order to win the big moment. So what do you do if you don't make it to that moment? You leverage the moment of, hey, we are a number 1 seed. We have the number 1 player in the country, and he's wearing our brand instead of, and folks will go back and forth with this, Nike, which is the biggest sports brand. And folks gonna say maybe not, but Nike still is. You still know Nike. You still know what they stand for. So how do you leverage that moment? That's number 1. The number 2 is be authentic. Like you just said, show us who he is off the court. Basketball, especially men's basketball, is so interesting because these student athletes are one and done. Because of NIL, we can sign early, and what's still even more interesting with NIL in high school, it's only 40 states that you can do NIL in.
Mm-hmm.
It's still recently new. Folks it just started in 2021. So folks need to, like you said, on your side of the house, decide if they're going to go all in, and you go all in with authenticity and what your athlete is doing, and give us something that they're known for off the court. What does he do pregame? What's his pregame warm-up look like? What does he eat? When it's not playing basketball, what does he do? Guess what? He has a younger brother who plays basketball as well. There are so many things that we don't know about him. And in a few, in draft is in July, he's going to go to another. And there should be certain things that we already know about him. And New Balance is the perfect stepping stone to teach us who is Cooper Flagg. And to me, like I said, yes, winning is so easy to do. But when you're knocked out right now, then what?
Now, Ivory, you are really hitting on some points here with Cooper and New Balance. Wow. A couple of things that, I want to point out. I want to give some props to another athlete that I work with just to show like what could happen. So one of my favorite athletes that I work with is Kelsey Plum. And I had a chance to work with her while at Under Armour and still do now, quiet as it's kept, but at Under Armour. But what I love about Kelsey is that she took Under Armour everywhere she went.
Yes.
So whether she was doing something for Google Pixel, Under Armour.
Yes.
Whether she was on a podcast, Under Armour. If she's working out and just posting on her feed and it's not one that the brand asked her for, she is wearing the correct stuff, highlighting what it is, close up on the shoe, whatever it may be. And that also goes a long way, because sometimes, I'm just going to say it, sometimes in working with some brands, they may give you one shot to do some work with them. They may come in with one idea, with one angle, and that's what you have to work with to show that you are a part of that brand team.
Yes.
But you can also take the brand with you and be doing your own post and ensuring that it's very clear that they are your partners. You could be going back to your own high school and handing out some shoes. You could be doing anything that you want to do. So that's just something for on the athlete side of things, the agent side of things. And I think a little bit the universities are kind of playing an intermediary role loosely for some of their student athletes, so they can really think about how to continue to give value to the brand partner to make them want to do more and sometimes show them how to get it done.
And that is exactly when I'm talking to student athletes and they say, oh, we want an NIL deal, we want a shoe deal. I'm like, other than what they tell you to do, what else can you do? You need to go further. You need to go above and beyond. You need to come up with creative ways to showcase this brand so they can say that you are a good partner. And that's what brands in this NIL space are looking for, are good partners. So it's one of those things like what do you like to do? Are you a gamer? And as you're sitting around gaming, when you're on Twitch and you have all these people following you, are you in your branded gear? Not some shirt you just threw on. Are you in your branded gear? Like you said, when I actually met Kelsey for the first time, it was at one of your events. And the first thing she said to me was, I love this workout gear. I can wear it all the time. That Under Armour isn't known for workout gear. Under Armour isn't known for athleisure. That was something that you definitely pushed them in the right direction for, because your vision of what it looks like. And now I'm looking like, oh, these are some cute pieces that I would definitely throw on, even though, I'm not an Under Armour girly. But that's what happens when you match the right partner and the right brand with the right athlete. So it's authentic and it's easy to portray and to bring it into your life.
Yes, I love that, and thank you for the shout out. It really was a lot of fun to work on, and that's really been the keys to my success. Is ensuring that it's a true partnership. You find the right match, and you both mutually win from whatever you're doing. What I am seeing, and you tell me what you're seeing too, the college side, I think that what is happening is these college athletes are being thrust into something that they just never done before. And agents, obviously there's some very experienced agents out there, but also some places are hiring sort of newbies to handle the college kids or the high school kids. And I think that there's just a lot to learn in this space. So, and then you throw in the university, sorry, the third piece of it, where they used to stray away from this. Like this was against the rules. Like you would be disqualified. You're talking to brands. And a lot of people working in the college athletic departments are of the old regime. I'm not dogging anyone, but just to be honest, like this came 3-4 years ago now. We're in this NIL era. And people have been in their jobs for a while and now they're having to experience this. So I think that a good thing to consider.
You're not even that job. Most schools, remember when this first started and you were sitting where you were sitting, you were talking to compliance first, or you were talking to a senior women's administrator who had no idea what this is. And then, with you sitting in your position, you're making big brand deals. So you're talking to ADs, but other smaller brands who that's another side of the coin that I talk to. How do you deal with a college and a college athlete, because they're not professional? And then the path that you have to go through when you're talking to someone that works at the school who never did this in their life, who never even thought that this was going to happen. Now you have another conversation on, this is not a professional athlete. This is that they don't have the time that you want them to have. These are students who are still, a majority of them, teenagers who are still trying to go to class at the same time. Athletes aren't content creators. They're athletes who know how to post. And what you're going to get is a post that they made in their dorm with a shaky thing. Sometimes it might be shaky. They won't say what you want them to say. They might not even get the shot in of what they're promoting, but guess what? Just tell them to be themselves and talk about the product, and you'll be fine.
That is so funny because I'm
Uh-huh.
just thinking back on some conversations and people expecting athletes, even professional athletes,
Oh yeah.
to be actors, to know how to read scripts. And that's a whole like sidebar that we can spend a lot of time on in terms of like what you expected to get and what you really got, and then
Oh
where
yeah.
your expectations in the right place. But that's neither here nor there. So the college space is transforming. I almost said transformed, but it's still in movement. Just today, I know you were like me, we're looking out to see if NCAA was going to come out and say something about this revenue share, but they're putting, I think they said by July, they're going to just have it ready to execute in July. But the point is, these colleges are in a tough position in that things have changed so rapidly, and now they have to figure out what they're going to do with these dollars, how to ensure that it is equitable, so that they can maintain female rosters as well. And it's a lot for them to navigate. So in full disclosure, this is when I talked about teams and bringing folks together who can help create strategy. In full disclosure, you'll see more from Ivory and I and Alexis Feaster and a few others around what to do in this space, working directly with college departments, because we want to help them navigate this and do it in the right and smart way. So Ivory, I'll toss to you in terms of what you think that are like maybe the 2 or 3 things that college athletic departments need to be getting on right now, so they're not flat-footed come July 1. Actually, before July 1, because as we know, with all the recruiting windows, you got to put your game face and right foot forward long before then, so that they're
Yes.
not behind the game.
So literally right now, today was a big day because this was when Judge Wilkins in California was going to oversee and overhear about the House settlement. No
Mm-hmm.
decision, like you mentioned, was going to be made today, but she was going to hear from objectors, and her job today, which we won't get a decision by no means today, it'll probably
Mm-hmm.
come next week or 2 weeks, was to agree or disagree to what is being placed on the table. The 4 biggest things that are being objected today is the number one thing is back pay. So supposedly, and wait a minute, 2 seconds. Let me get my notes so I'm for surely accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, no, because I wrote my great LinkedIn post about this, just, like you said, to keep us on task and to make sure that we know what we're talking about here in detail. And the biggest thing is folks kept saying, oh, we're going to get an answer today. We're getting an answer. And I'm like, no, we're not getting an answer today. What she gets to do is hear all the arguments. What's very interesting about it, though, is in the 4 arguments, she can't pick and choose. If she says no to one, the whole thing goes away.
Yep.
So if she says yes, she has to either take everything or she has to disagree with everything. And your biggest thing is the back pay. Since 2016, there's supposed to be 2.8 billion that's supposed to be given to back pay of students who went to school and now they want to give them part of this money. So the biggest thing is the people who are objecting are saying that's not enough. So that's point number one.
Mm-hmm.
The second point is that they are going to have the 22.5 million in rev share that's going to be spread across the entire athletic department. Folks are saying that that's supposed to be more. And I can understand because how the numbers are going to play out, it is going to be 70% going to, yes, of course, because that's the rev share and they bring in the most money.
Mm-hmm.
So 70% going to football, 15% going to men's and women's basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, they're going to fight because there are some schools who have really great both programs, men's and women's, and then some schools who the men's are great and the women are not, and the women are great and the men are not.
Yep.
So fight about that. The third thing is the roster limit. What part of that is that you get to have a bigger roster, and with bigger rosters come more scholarships. But then for the Olympic sports, you won't be able to have preferred walk-ons, and you won't be able to keep people in your program that we are actually turning into pros and giving them more than enough. What's the word I'm going to look for? I don't even want to say education, but we're helping them refine their skills to get ready to go to the Olympics.
Yes, so people don't realize that Olympic sports are called Olympic sports for a reason. Because when you look at the pipeline for the U.S. Olympic teams, these people are collegiate athletes. Very few are you seeing jumping from high school to, some sports that happens, right? But a lot of them are coming from college to Olympic team, or even pro to Olympic team, but college first. So that is really, really critical, particularly women's sports.
Yes, and then also think about how NIL gave the opportunity for a lot of our gymnasts who are young women who are 16, 17, 14 when they made the team, and now back in college because NIL allows them to do both now.
And I love that. That to me is like my favorite part, because to see these young women who are so exceptional pretty much give up their childhood, give up all the normal things that others get to do to begin with, to become a pro and never get the chance to be on a college campus. And Lord knows that's where I grew up. Like, that is like one of my favorite parts of that we've seen. So seeing Suni Lean at Auburn, and seeing Jordan at UCLA, I think that's one of my favorite things that's happened.
I was about to say, we trying to see if Jordan is going to win this all around, or what's the other little girl's name who did what did she do at the Olympics this? There's only 5 of them. The other little girl, she's at another college and she's trying to win the all around too. So it's like, oh, these are 2 Olympics that are trying to win the all around in college after they just won it in the Olympics. And that's, I feel like, with our younger athletes that are going straight to college, here is in your face proof of what can happen and what it looks like in real life to make it to the biggest stage that your sport could possibly have. And then the last one that, I know is going to light a fire in you is Title.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So the implications that they're going to say is that this raises Title IX concerns, because with that amount of money going to football, and a thing that is going to be even better is in some places 75% of the dollars are going to go to football, and 20% to men's and women's in basketball. So that means 5% left for all of the sports that are remaining. If you're at an 18 sport school, that means that 15 of the other sports are going to have to split this money, and that's 5%. So to wrap this in a lovely bow, she's not going to decide today what is going to happen. What she's going to decide over the time it takes for her to make a decision is if all of those terms are agreeable and fair to everybody. If she thinks one of them isn't and she throws it out, then they're going to trial. If she does find everything agreeable, then and starting in the fall, the students from 2016 will start to get their back pay. Rev share will be on the table for fall sports. And last but not least, all the kids who signed up will now have to give their NLI rights back to the school. Did I forget to slip that in there?
That to me is where I get all excited. So to break that down for anyone who wants to understand. So once revenue sharing happens and student athletes can sign for Deloitte to determine how much their value is from an NIL perspective. I know it's a lot of topics.
Yep, nope, that's 2 things. Revenue share is totally different than NIL. Revenue share, money that the school makes from the media, ticket sales, apparel, any type of money that the school makes on revenue, the school will now be physically paying each athlete. Part of the stipulations on this case is if you make anything over $600, you have to turn it into the school. Then the school turns it over to Deloitte, who gives you fair market value. Basically, they get to say if your deal is good or not.
And that's exactly where I was going. And so what happens is now the school sees all the potential money that you can receive. And it's a deeper conversation that I think that we could spend some more time on, but I think that it could in the interim go over people's heads. So I think we should maybe come back to that one and really dig into it. But the point you're making is that things are really changing in that space. And more than ever, it's going to be important for sports business professionals to be involved in what is happening in collegiate athletics because of the fact that athletic directors are now having to think about whether or not they can provide value to maintain the women's sports teams, because I think it's pretty obvious those are the ones that are going to not get the same amount. And people, and we even talk about this, but you and I had chatted about it before. You'll have conferences like the Big East who really don't have football teams, which means they can have money to shuttle to other sports that may make them look more attractive than some of the large, SEC, ACC, all the sorts of ones. So anyway, from brand perspective, I think there's going to be a lot of movement that is happening, a lot of interest in what and how to get involved, and a lot of confusion. So I think it's just a really good time to streamline the conversations and to help people understand where they can play, whether or not they should just benefit from being a sponsor of the school. And for athletes who opt into the revenue share, you'll be able to leverage, I believe, their name, image, and likeness, potentially, if this all goes through the sponsorship of the school. Is that enough for you? So there's a lot to really pack into this.
And that was what I was going to say. From your side of the house, from the brand side of the house, you now get 19 sport athletes that you could choose to deal with without having to pay them directly, because that's NIL, is when you're paying the student directly to use their name, image, and license. But when this revenue share goes through, basically all the students are, let's say, placed in a bank, and you're allowed to use their image without particularly having to pay them, because they're part of the rev share and the brand partnership that you did with the school. And we know that's not fair. Hey, hey, Coke, just put my face on the can and don't pay me for it. But since you paid the school and they're paying me already, that works.
Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see how detailed they get in the rules, because if you were to use a professional equivalent, it's just like a group licensing agreement where you can use rule of six athletes from the NBA and a point of sale. It doesn't mean you have a deal with one of them. It just means that, that you have a deal with the league or the team, right? So I think that there could be some of that goes on. But for the brands, that's not nearly enough to really break through. You do need to go deep and find individual relationships or whatever the right method is for what you're trying to accomplish, and not just rely on that. That's kind of the tried and true, and why you get team deals or league deals right now, which has never stopped the brand from also signing athletes. So it just goes down to strategy. What's the brand trying to accomplish? What's the right way to mix and mingle here? More conversations and more needs to have experts in the building who know what they're doing.
That's what I say to you. Based off of everything that you know, right now, we both know there are not enough experts that are working on college campus in athletics under any domain to make sure our kids aren't taken advantage of, and this is fair, compared to there are individuals, some schools, teams have a different NIL general manager. Some schools, everything goes to one space. Some schools, compliance is still doing it. They have an NIL. And then the last thing that I didn't even throw out here that's going to turn it into a whole turmoil is the collective. The collective is still going to functioning. Some are trying to move it in-house. But do you really think the folks that have long, deep pockets who have been paying these players for their NIL are going to stop and give up the power that they've had for the last 3 years just because the NCAA has changed their mind on something again?
Yeah, that's going to be a hard thing to peel back. And what I can say is that one of the most important lessons that I've learned in business is the ability to develop an organization and a structure that allows people's strengths and their perspectives and what the value they can bring to come into the conversation at the right time to make it happen. And I think there is a role for the collectives. There is a role for any and every person that's in a NIL related function within an athletic department or a team, whether it's like a GM, et cetera. I think there's a role for all of them. The key is, how are the roles being defined?
Yes.
Who's on first for what? Where does one role end, the other end? I was talking with someone in the athletic department recently, and something we haven't brought up, I know you and I both know intimately, is the student athlete development persons, which are the
Oh,
ones that have always been traditionally helping us learn about financial literacy or job fairs and, all those soft skills that help make us whole people. And now they also have a piece of this story.
yeah.
And I know a lot of them are not trained in that, right? So how do you bring in all these expertise and people and perspectives and agendas and whatever and make it all work so that the school and the student athlete are both functioning well? Is a really hard task, but that's what everyone's up against. So I hope that everyone's ready to play. They got the right folks in play, because it's a critical time that will impact your recruiting.
Yeah. And it's stay ready so you don't have to get ready. But
Yep.
when we say stay ready, if this agreement says, if Judge Wilkins says yes to this, ready is September, August when school starts. And
Yeah.
so are you prepared? Are you hiring? Like, what's so interesting to me is I don't see a lot of job openings that would be the glue to put this all together in an academic and athletic department, because this has
Yep.
to fall under athletics, even though so many other pieces on campus touch it. And so I should, jobs should be flying. Oh, come be our general manager, come be the associate athletic director of marketing rev. That it should be so many job titles that are just raising antennas and calling people in who know the business. And like I said, someone like you with the brand mind, that's a great fit. Someone like me with an athletic mind, that's a great fit. And so now it's like, how do we string all of these things together so that our athletic department is prepared and ready to do this? Remember, for supposedly every athlete on campus.
Yes. So as you all can imagine, Ivory and I will not be staying on the sidelines as this stuff comes to form, right? So just know that we are heavily invested in it. And just based on conversations, I think you'll see some of that shape coming to life for some athletic departments. But if I could real quick take a turn, because again, just thinking about the conclusion of the women's basketball tournament, and it's still so crazy to me that right around the corner next week is WNBA draft. Like it's these women, what they go through while they're still completing school in the last semester is wild. But last year's draft, well, there's a couple things I want to say. This class of 2020, which included some of last year's draft class, so Caitlin, Angel, Cameron, et cetera, but then also the ones that stayed behind, injuries, et cetera, Paige Beckers and others. Like, this class was so exceptional in terms of the skill they brought to basketball and the eyeballs they brought to basketball, honestly. But what Angel and Caitlin and Cam and Rakia and all those girls did last year at the draft in terms of slay in the runway is something that we just have not seen in a long time. I mean, women have always been dressed well, but the level of anticipation that we all had and the level of delivery of these women is something that is unmatched. So I'm excited to be at the draft next week to see what the flavor is. We got a new crop though. It's not the same ladies. Like, what do you think we might see? You think it's going to be as high fashion? We're going to see more individuality? Think the conversation is going to be about something else? What's your pick?
Yes, I think the huge conversation is going to be about, um, of course, this year's It Girl is going to be Paige, but Paige
Yes.
isn't known for fashion. She isn't known for stepping out there and having a
Her
different
heel's a
look.
little tight, but she does have a sense of style that's dope.
Oh, very much so. And to me, with us already knowing that she's the first pick, with us already knowing that she's going to Dallas, with us already knowing these things ahead of time, I believe that right now her team should have been ready, prepared. Let's go. Let's see what this look like. And so, what I would love to see the WNBA, and this is something that I said that they should have done last year, is they should have done a better job in introducing all of us to who is next. As soon as that first draft class is gone and we're talking about it and we're in the season, WNBA should have let us know who are the next set of girls that are ready and who's coming in. Because I believe with them and their brand, how we got so excited last year was the Caitlin and the Angel Reese that 2 years ago when that clicked, that of course put the viewership up, that turned everything on, and that was the explosion. So now here's our aftermath. So who is next? And that's the one thing I wish the WNBA, like, I know they have one, but I'm like, y'all need a hard liaison between the league and college. So no
Yeah.
one can say we didn't know who was next. You know, prime example, Juju will not be able to, injury aside, even if she wasn't injured, next year wouldn't have been her draft year. So who is in the next class already? Like, I feel like these conversations need to be ongoing. So now when you're saying, so what do you think the draft is going to look like? What do you think the players are going to wear? All of the things that come together to make that night exciting, we would know because we've already been invested in the ladies that are coming.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I want to like, you dropping gems, but one thing I want to pull out of that conversation is that the importance of connecting the fan bases between NCAA and WNBA. I think that I don't want to minimize anyone's efforts, but there was because of the bigness of Caitlin Clark and because of the bigness of Angel Reese, some fans matriculate to WNBA.
Yes.
If I'm guessing, in a higher percentage than they normally do.
Oh.
But that should have been and I'm sure it has been for many, an example of what could be or what could have been the entire time. And I feel like I'm starting to see on the team level, at least, them trying to make the connections. What do I mean by that? And I think I mentioned this before and maybe an earlier podcast, that since Aja Wilson has been at the Las Vegas Aces, I have seen the Las Vegas Aces come back to Columbia, South Carolina to do things with their fan base.
Have to.
Leveraging Asia. And actually their team also played an exhibition game.
Yes.
Colonial Life Arena, because they understand that all those fans are potential to be Aces fans. And that is something that is, I think, unique to women's sports, and that their fans do follow I think all sports fans follow their athletes, but the passion behind it, something is a little different on the women's side that I think that the W and potentially other professional women's sports leagues can do a little bit more of to really shore up their fan base.
Yeah, I mean, like years of me, LSU, and sports, and all of those. The most interesting thing was when LSU played Coppin last year, because that's the space where Angel Reese is from.
Mm-hmm.
And they took a game back there, and that game, it sold out. The ticket master, the lady at the ticket desk was like, ma'am, this game sold out by September. We've been waiting for this and waiting for her. And the game was packed. The people were there to see her, all the fans, everyone. And like you just said, that connection is what's going to elevate these sports even higher, because the fans are attached to something. They're attached to someone. They're like, I remember her when she played over here at, with me in Pee Wee at the Little Leagues when we was growing up in elementary school. She was on my bitty ball team. And so those are the things that I feel like brands definitely tap into, and bigger brands, i.e., all the sports, soccer, women's basketball, Jeanette, all of it, that you start there and highlight the hometown and keep telling the story. And now more fans will come to watch it because they're invested.
Well, that is some free game for some brand, some league, some team to really take and do something with moving forward. So, Ivory, thank you so much for joining me on episode 3. This has been a lot of fun to really dig in to a little more detail what's happening in college sports. So I love that. I love that we did this. Thank you so much. For those that tuning in for the first time, this is how the business is played. We will talk about sports business, less about the X and O, so you can understand the game within the game. So again, Charece Williams, thank you for tuning in. Until next time.